Okay, well, once again, I'm sitting here with my oldest son Asher, who is 16 right now, and
Hello.
he wanted to sit down again and ask me this time some questions about Spirit Blade Dark Ritual. We're focused specifically again on the legacy editions in the trilogy, but this is, I guess, turning into kind of a series of conversations about the Spirit Blade trilogy in each of its parts. So I have no idea what Asher's going to ask me, what he wants to talk about. So I'm just going to hand it over to Asher now for whatever he wants to bring up.
Yeah, so first I want to say that I plan to do this series in four different parts. The first three is, the first episode would already came out like last week, which was us talking about Spirit Blade. And then today we're doing Dark Ritual. And then I'm hoping that next week or sometime after a week from now, if not exactly a week from now, we can do one on A World of Shadows and then cap it all off with all the songs and the story of how he created them. So in case you're joining in now, I'm doing this to interview my dad on the behind the scenes and for why certain things happened and his thought process on things and how some things happened. So, first thing, last week I said that you should do your research on your thought process for the Nephilim, and then we would come back to this next week. And unfortunately for you, it is next week. So.
Oh, I didn't do any research.
Well, then...
Didn't I say that, couldn't we just decide that I made a mistake and just be okay with that?
I did say that, but I'm not satisfied anymore.
Dang it. I don't even remember what the question was. Is it relevant to Dark Ritual?
Not that, it's not that relevant, but it's just the one question that I feel like...
Okay, ask me again. Let's see if I have anything better to say.
In the first Spirit Blade, we are introduced to a Nephilim, which is not actually the Nephilim,
That's
but
right.
it's a new... It's like the Nephilim 2.0 or something.
Yeah.
It's complicated because it explains itself as this being that exists in the natural and supernatural world at the same time.
Yeah.
But also can possess Claudius, which he does halfway through. And so I am confused on how any of that works, what it looks like when a shifter's shifting through. Is this like Claudius doing everything? Is this Claudius himself?
Mm-hmm.
Is he the Nephilim, or is this something that is the Nephilim that also exists in both planes of existence, and then possessed Claudius? But he also had a presence in the physical world already.
Yes.
So it's very confusing.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm not going to be able to report on what I was thinking at the time that I wrote the story. I just can't do that. We need a time machine to figure that out.
Mm-hmm.
What I would, I guess, suggest right now that maybe I was thinking, and that maybe my mind leans toward right now. I mean, the truth is that every person that listens is going to kind of either say that doesn't work, or they're going to have a way of reasoning it out in their mind. That's just the way geek fiction is.
Yeah, I tried.
Okay. So let's say that the concept of the Nephilim that he's talking about is a demon, a type of demon that operates simultaneously in the supernatural and the physical worlds. And so he is anchored to Claudius in some sense, pretty much right at the beginning, and has been for a while.
Yeah, because he says he also says that his host Claudius is unaware of his presence. So he's probably, before he even possessed Claudius, or at least his dead corpse, he was influencing him somehow.
Yeah. And so what I would maybe want to suggest is that the Nephilim and this isn't the biblical concept of Nephilim. It's kind of filling in some gaps, proposing some new ideas that are vague, distant possibilities, but probably
Like
not
I
true.
said, not the actual Nephilim.
Yes, that's right. But like let's say that in the context of Spirit Blade, a Nephilim is a demon who, whether it's because he is permanently grafted to a human body or not, is in an ongoing mode of operating in the physical and non-physical worlds at the same time. So that would actually, so in by that definition, then even a demon that is like quote unquote possessing somebody over an extended period of time would, by that definition, be functioning as a Nephilim. Does that make sense?
Say that again one more time.
That like on this definition of Nephilim that I'm just kind of making up and proposing right now, even a demon that is quote unquote possessing somebody for a long period of time would, by this definition, be operating as a Nephilim. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because they would be in the supernatural, but they'd also be having strong influence, even in some sense controlling the actions of this person.
Yeah.
You know?
But clearly, also, this one is different. So I'm trying to understand that difference.
Different in what way?
Different from other demons.
Oh, okay.
Because he sets himself, like, higher on, like not even on the caste system.
Oh, yeah. That's right, yeah. And so that what's kind of hinted at there, because Vincent, and we're still kind of talking just the original Spirit Blade right now, not even Dark Ritual yet, but I believe Vincent says it's been a while since I danced with an Overlord.
Yes.
So that implies that an Overlord, that's a pretty high rank. And then
Like just the one below princes, if I remember.
Yeah, but Nephi, I think, retorts saying, think bigger, little man. So the Nephilim then would be a rank or a step or some status that is above an Overlord. So I don't know that he's necessarily completely outside of any kind of caste or ranking system, but he's higher than any kind of demon that Vincent has tangled with before.
So probably about prince status, or maybe somewhere in between prince and
I think that's
Overlord.
I think that's reasonable.
Okay, so now that we know where he is on the caste system, that pins it back to the original question, which is, what can he do that's different from demons, from a regular demon?
He functions as a Nephilim in that he attaches himself to a human body so that he can function in both the physical and non-physical world at the same time. That's kind of the chief difference.
And so what does that look like in the physical world?
In the physical world, like at the front, it just looks like Claudius being heavily influenced, maybe even controlled in ways that he's unaware of, or that he is indirectly permissive of because of his just abandonment of any interest in following Yahweh.
Okay.
Well, we don't call God Yahweh in the Spirit Blade trilogy, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. So would you say that is Claudius who went to the underground liberation hideout?
No, I would say that is the Nephilim.
So here's the thing. This is what I'm understanding. When he says that his host is Claudius, he means like that's his kind of sort of attachment, where he's able to influence better than any other demon, to the point where Claudius is just absolutely just going to do whatever that influence is.
Either that, or he is influencing in a more semi-permanent, ongoing way.
Yeah.
You know, where he's just kind of like, he's taken up residence in Claudius.
So he doesn't have a physical form, so to speak.
The Nephilim?
Yeah, the Nephilim.
No.
But because he's so attached to Claudius, that's what he thinks.
He thinks of Claudius as
like his physical
his
form.
body.
Yeah.
He's really taking ownership of Claudius and Claudius's body and.
Okay. I don't think there's a mistake in there. I think it just comes down to bad wording.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah, that's where I'm going to put it at. So now we are going to go on to Dark Ritual finally. Um, first thing, first question is about the whole, how, like, casting all the characters. Because last time you said starting with this one, you casted people that don't actually go to our church.
Yeah.
You just like found people on a casting call or something.
Yes.
So I am wanting to know how that all worked out,
Yeah.
or how that
Okay.
worked.
So, at that time, I was involved in some online, just kind of amateur audio drama production groups. One of them was Darker Projects, is one that I remember. Or let's see, was I involved in anything they did, or was I just listening to some of their stuff? I can't remember now. But there was, at that time, I don't know if I haven't been involved in any of these groups in a long time. But at that time, I was getting involved in some stuff and auditioning for some stuff, getting some parts and stuff. So I was kind of rubbing elbows a little bit with a few different people. And I think I'm trying to remember if I put a casting call out for like local actors or if it was just online. Because there was one actor, oh dang it, and his name escapes me right now, but he was a guy that lived in the UK, and David Alt, I think is his name. And he had been doing a number of voices in these audio dramas, in some of these kind of like just volunteer kind of communities. And I can't remember if I approached him directly or if he just responded to an online audition that I posted. I think he might have auditioned. But he got cast as one of the Song Toffee. So he's the UK British Song Toffee.
Yeah, I figured because
And let's see here. Preston Hancock, the pastor, Preston Hancock at our church, he and I were hanging out and watching Farscape and stuff, around that time, or maybe actually a little prior to that time. But we'd kind of been connecting enough in those days that he was someone I quickly went to ask if he would be one of the Song Toffee.
yeah, he voices a lot of people, doesn't he?
No, not Preston.
No, not him.
No,
Because he voices. Wasn't that one guy in World of Shadows?
Yes, he does two characters in A World of Shadows.
Yeah.
He does one in Dark Ritual.
Yeah, that's what I mean by he's doing multiple.
Oh,
characters.
yeah. He does, yeah.
And
But
didn't he also? Am I thinking incorrectly, or did he also do a character in the original Spirit Blade?
I don't think so. Unless, when I did this,
Because I thought he was credited for something. But
maybe
I'm not sure.
when I did the special edition, I went back and had a few lines re-recorded, but mostly like background voices or like one-off voices. Like my friend Chris Van Slyke, whose wife is Melissa Van Slyke, and she played the High Priestess in Dark Ritual. And Chris, we were drama nerd buddies in junior high, and we kind of got back in touch years later, and he actually did the guitar work for all the songs that have guitar in them in Spirit Blade Dark Ritual. He's like a fantastic guitar player and bass player. And then he also played one of the Song Toffee. And his wife, Melissa, I knew because she had been involved in some of the Broadway musical productions that our church did under Mickey Bryce. And she'd been in at least a couple of those. And so I asked her if she would be willing to do the part of the High Priestess. And so she got on board for that. I'm trying to think of who else. Well, then there's Sean Anthony Roberts, who, yeah, who lived in California. And other than Tully, well, actually, Dark Ritual was the first time that I flew. Well, I flew Tully out. I can't believe now I had the budget for that. I'd been saving up for a while, but I flew Tully out for a weekend. Isn't that crazy to say?
No. I couldn't imagine doing that.
So I flew him out for a crazy weekend of recording. And then Sean Anthony Roberts, because we're also friends with their family, I paid for their gas mileage, for all their gas, to drive out here, and we kind of turned it into a hangout vacation for them and like hang out with them and our families. And so they were here also for a weekend, and he did all of his recording in a weekend. And I'm thinking those are all that I can think of the new cast members that didn't go to our church. Although some of them, like Preston, did. But anyway.
Okay.
Oh, and David was recast.
Yes, I did notice that.
But with a guy that's that was going to our church.
Okay.
Yeah.
A guy or a kid?
A kid. Well, he's a kid at the time. He's a guy now. He's married off. Do you know Blake Herman?
Yes, I know
Okay,
Blake Herman.
his older brother is Craig Herman Jr.
Craig Herman, yeah.
Who did the voice of David in Dark Ritual. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I knew it was a Herman. Didn't know which one. Okay, so now, that was interesting. I listened to half of it, and now we're going to get on to our first clip.
All right, well, your show, Vince. What are we doing first?
It all starts with Miracli.
Who's Miracli?
Not who. What? Miracli is what we call the energy vapor you can see and feel throughout the spirit world. It's in the physical world, too, but harder to sense.
What is it exactly?
The stuff the universe is made of.
Grand unified theory tells us about nuclear strong, nuclear weak, gravity, and electromagnetism. In those forces, we have a grasp of how the universe is held together. But what maintains the consistency of those laws? What holds them together?
Miracli.
In my studies,
Alright, so that was a clip of when Ran is first introducing showing Miracli to Merrick. So
I think it's the first time we call it that, too. I don't think it was
Yes.
ever called Miracli
yeah,
in the first one.
I considered the fact that possibly you didn't have a name for it in the first one.
I honestly don't remember if I had come up with the name Miracli yet or not.
Everyone simply referred to it as the energies of this world.
Yes, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think that either way, I wasn't interested in getting that I think I might have had a name for it that was different from Miracli, but I was calling it Astrum for a while. I was calling it Astrum for a while. I think in the novella I called it Astrum, which is taken from the word astral, as in the astral plane, which is kind of like it's my reference for it was in comic books. Like if people are going to the spiritual world, they're going to the astral plane, but I think it actually has anchors in real world Eastern, probably, mysticism. And so I didn't want to have any kind of connections to that. So, and I also knew that in the first one, I didn't want to unpack all of this thing and how it works. I would wait until Merrick had kind of gained his powers, which he doesn't until the end, really, of the first one, and then he would get some training and exploration of how things work in the second one.
Yeah. Which is a question that I have about. Why does this training take place a year after the first Spirit Blade?
Well, I don't really have an answer to that. I mean, what I would suggest at least is that there wasn't a whole year where Merrick was just sitting on his hands.
Yeah.
He was traveling maybe around the world, but he'd been hearing about some believers that he mentions that at the end of the first one, that like he'd hear about some groups of believers.
Yeah.
And so I would suggest right now that they were rebuilding finding a new place for the base.
Yeah, finding the place,
and
building it.
And Merrick was traveling around trying to make connections with scattered groups of believers. So I kind of imagine those two activities as like the big things that were taking up time for about a year.
Okay. All right, yeah, that makes sense. And then I also noticed that I don't know why I forgot his name. Ran
Yeah.
has a converter at this point, which doesn't which isn't like publicly, so to speak, available until A World of Shadows. So did he build this like as a thing he was just working on before this, like in between the two,
Like a
first two?
converter that allowed him to go into the spirit world?
Yeah.
Wasn't there something like that? I'm trying to remember now. In the first one, when the base got attacked.
Yeah, there was a converter there that like created portals that would guide you to destinations.
Yes, but not drop you off in the spirit world. They just kind of use the spirit world to kind of get you from A to B in the physical world.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't remember having a definitive idea in my mind of whether or not there was he had the tech to actually put a non-shifter in the spirit world. Mm-hmm. I think that even if he did have that tech, it would have been something that was usually avoided because of how dangerous that is for non-shifters, and so they really have to make sure before someone like Ran goes into the spirit world via converter that like there is zero to no demonic activity,
Yeah.
nearby.
Which is the place they end up going.
Yeah.
What the drat? Ran! Your arm just turned into a present cannon!
Vincent! Shift! Now!
Alright, so that was a clip of, nothing busy. Everyone fell out of an airplane. Or whatever they were in. I would assume some sort of aircraft that
Yeah.
contains enough room for people to walk around in.
Yeah.
Not in an aisle.
Yeah.
And Rand's arm became a cannon. Couple questions on that.
Okay.
First of all, what's the science behind that? Just out of curiosity.
Oh.
Because this came out before or around the time Iron Man came out. Probably after Iron Man, but...
Let's see. This came out in I think it was early November of 2008.
Almost Halloween time.
So when did Iron Man, the first Iron Man, come out?
I think it was like May of 2008, but I could be
Okay.
wrong. Probably wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, it would have been written well before then. It's funny, some of the overlap. I mean, there's some overlap between the third script and the first Avengers movie, which the A World of Shadows came out well after the first Avengers movie, but the script was written before it. And there was a moment at the end that was very similar to the Hulk Iron Man kind of rescue thing or whatever at the end. Anyway,
So,
yeah, I don't know, sci-fi tech.
that's it, the sci-fi tech.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably some nanotech thrown in there, just whatever makes those sounds and does those cool things is what did it.
Alright. So now we're on this topic, I have to know, because I'm so curious, what are all the weapons that Ran has built into his new body? Because he has clearly developed a lot over a year.
Yeah, he has.
He's got like a heat thing that burns your body from the inside out.
Yeah,
Heat dart thing. He's got the regular tranquilizer darts. He's got energy blasters that have pretty much everything about the already confusing pulse rifles.
yeah.
And
Yeah, for a humble, gentle guy, Ran is freaking powerful and very capable. I mean,
not as powerful as someone else.
well,
Some other people.
well, I suppose, but I mean, yeah,
He's a big guy.
yeah, and basically, I mean, I established some real strong limitations for Ran in Dark Ritual. I mean, he really comes a hair's breadth away from death.
Yeah.
And so I didn't feel a need to dial back too much on like what he was capable of, and like what he could pull out and stuff, what kind of devices or whatever. So there's in the DC Superheroes RPG, the paper and pencil RPG that came out in like the 80s and that I would have been playing at around this time in the years leading up to it. There's like a special gadget called an Omni Gadget, which basically allows you to just in the moment decide what powers and abilities it has. And Batman was totally
Broke the audio.
Batman was totally kitted out with Omni Gadgets. He's just whatever gadget he kind of needs, and so Ran is certainly not the first character to be like that. In fact, there's a blooper where Mike Tully, who plays Ran, said, go Gadget arm cannon, which is a reference to Inspector Gadget, who, in a very comical fashion, could just kind of make anything come out of his robotic body that he wanted, And so Ran is very much that type of character.
Who says go Gadget arm cannon?
No, but who can do those kinds of things, but hopefully not to a comical degree, But yeah.
Okay. Okay, and one last question. Why was he trying to blast the floor on his way down? Or whatever he was doing with that cannon?
Well, he explained it, I think, while he was falling, that the impact from the explosion would, like, produce shockwaves.
Yeah.
That then would, blast upward, and he would be falling down into those shockwaves, and so that would kind of counter the momentum of his fall and kind of slow and cushion his fall.
Okay, yeah.
And he used the force field to survive the upward concussive blast.
What does the force field look like?
Well, tell me what comes to mind for you. And then I'll tell you what comes to mind for me.
Okay, so the way I see it, it's like these like projector things. Like on like each side of his abdomen area, come out on each side, like front, both sides and the back. That would like project this circular 3-foot radius force field.
Yeah,
I'd
okay.
say
Okay.
3 to 2 foot radius.
So you're talking about like what does the force field look like in terms of what produces it?
Also, yeah, that and also kind of what it looks like. I imagine what just any force field and anything about anything you watch would look like.
Yeah. Yep. And that's about what I had in mind. I actually did not have any particular idea in mind for what was emitting the force field. So yeah, no, your thoughts are as good as any.
Projectors that project more than light. How about?
Sure.
So projector 2.0.
This one is strong physically. Unfortunately, he is weak spiritually.
Really? Why don't you say that again a little closer?
Find them. We head for the village.
But Brother Saulos, the metallic one.
Leave him to rot. He will not be allowed to defile the village. Take the others. It is time we knew our enemy, and for them to know Kristaya the Lorga.
Pausing right on that beautiful. My dad is the only person in the choir singing in the background choir.
I don't remember this. I didn't hear I'm still not hearing the clips that Asher is playing.
Yeah, but you'll know what it is.
Okay.
But anyways, that was the clip of the song Toffee just captured all the three amigos.
Oh, so it's like the Kristaya Lorga, that like that the Sanctafi theme. Is that what you're talking about? Singing in the choir.
Toffee theme. You made a name for it.
I don't know. That's just what I would casually call it. It's the Sanctafi theme.
Okay, I have no idea. I had no idea there were themes.
Oh, but that's what you're talking about, right? It's like a men's choir in the background.
By immense, just you. It's
yes, just me. Yeah, yeah, for sure.
a one-man choir.
Yeah.
All right. Merrick, what are you doing in their choir, buddy? Anyways.
Merrick doesn't sing like that.
All right. You sure was there, but whatever. Okay. So that was the clip, anyways, where the Sung Toffee captured the three amigos.
Okay.
Which I don't normally call them, but I'm calling them for comedic relief here.
Sure.
But anyways, so this is where we begin to talk about the Sung Toffee specifically. Probably one of the most interesting ones, I think, for this one is obviously they wear blue robes, but that's all we can really imagine from what they look like. Obviously, there's also like a huge number of them.
Yeah.
And then, so yeah, my question is these words that come from the Sung Toffee, including Sung Toffee itself. There's also like the Lorga and Krishtaya. Mm-hmm. All these words, I don't think they're English. They don't sound very English.
Some of them are derived from English.
Yeah, but English itself is also derived from other languages.
Yeah.
So I'm curious as to what the language of origin is here.
Okay. Well, first off, you mentioned the blue robes of the Sung Toffee, and as we look at the clip here playing on the monitor, I see the logo, the cover image for Dark Ritual, which is very red. And I, to this day, when I think of the Sung Toffee in my mind, I imagine them with red robes. I know I wrote blue, but I have never imagined them with blue robes, except for when I maybe wrote that line. For some reason, red. I think it's because it's more sinister of a color, more aggressive of a color, and because the cover of Dark Ritual is red. But that's so weird every time, I think of that blue robes. Okay.
But then if you do that, it makes me think of Wizards of Thay.
Oh, well, sorry.
Dungeons and Dragons.
Anyway, so Krishtaya is
Pronounce the accent.
Is just kind of like a warped version of Christ.
Figured.
And so, yeah, that's, I think most people could probably figure that out. Lorga, now that's a weird one.
Yeah. At this point, like, a younger me would have said, that's just a more version of Lord. But then you have a G in there.
Yes.
So I'm like, what is that?
You're close. So before I launched Spirit Blade Productions in 2006, for 2 years I was the worship pastor at our church. And for part of that time, we still had a choir. And this was something that,
Is it a one-man choir?
No. A common phrase in choral music, Christian choral music, is Lord God. But choirs, if they don't really articulate their consonants, it just comes out Lord God, and so I don't know if I just thought this in my head or if I ever said this in a rehearsal. But the idea was, we don't worship the Lorga. We worship the Lord God. And what I imagine about the Sung Toffee, thematically, this is who they are. They are those that do not truly value the truth. They are caught up in tradition and ritual and procedure and all these kinds of things that are these surface structural elements instead of the truth itself. And so I imagine...
Or at least are tricked into thinking that way.
Yeah. And are content to not, push back and really pursue truth. Because there's something about that arrangement that they like, that culture, that experience, that life experience they like. And remember... the Bible had been outlawed across the planet. And so where are people going to be getting their theology, their ideas of the God of the Bible? Well, if the Bible was outlawed, maybe there were still other things that quoted the Bible that survived, such as Christian music in some places. And so I imagine that maybe what these guys got their hands on were some bad church choir recordings where the Lorga keeps getting mentioned, or something along those lines, I'm not saying that's definitively the canon.
Yeah, I was gonna say because there's how they don't use technology, so I wonder.
But that's
poorly written.
That's where that idea kind of came from. Is like, okay, if these guys are not really into the truth, they're just into the surfacey stuff, then that could kind of be a representation of that in the way I construct that word. So that's where the Lorga came from.
Okay. And one last thing. It's the setting of pretty much all of Spirit Blade, actually. So where's the place that most of it takes place? Where's the city that everyone lived in?
Oh.
And then also, where did the Sangtafi live?
The city, I imagine, I think this might even be in the novella, but in the Arizona desert. Which we live in.
How original.
We live in Mesa, Arizona,
wow.
a suburb of Phoenix.
Yeah, criminals come to our home, send some drone strikes over here.
Okay, Mesa's a big enough city that, just don't say our address. Anyway.
I live in...
Stop! But I imagine it being out in the desert, not Phoenix. Like, Phoenix would have crumbled and died or whatever, and the not the Sangtafi, the what are the aliens called? What do I call them? The Shada.
The Shada.
The Shada, that's right.
I couldn't remember it either.
But the Shada, among their gifts of technology and whatever they gave to humanity, the idea is that they would have given them the ability to have this lush, beautiful city, be built in the middle of the desert that wasn't suffering from the climate of the desert. That the Shada would have fixed that for humanity, or given them the means to have this beautiful city in the desert. So that's the city that's being referred to throughout the trilogy.
Great, glad to know this is all personal now.
Yeah.
And then
what was the other question?
Where did Sangtafi live?
Oh.
Where is Sangtafi Island?
Yeah, I didn't have a clear idea in my mind. I kind of imagined maybe somewhere in Africa, some very unsettled place, some part of the world that maybe it's a desert somewhere out, I imagine it being in an unsettled place somewhere in the world.
Okay.
Because they're looking to be separated from the rest of the world.
Yeah.
So it's not just going to be in, wherever they are. I imagine it's somewhere roughly on the other side of the planet, from America. And I mean, it could be Australia for all I know. But I think in my mind I defaulted toward somewhere in Europe or Africa.
I think I would have made it Australia, honestly.
Yeah, that does sound cool.
That's my headcanon now.
Okay, yeah, go for it.
Great. Everyone lives in a future where the capital of the most powerful company in the world is my hometown. Lovely.
Woohoo. Well, not really. Again, it's a new city out in the desert. It's not...
But it used to be Mesa.
Gotcha, okay.
So, therefore, it is personal now.
It used to be Mesa. But, that's okay. You just do whatever you want with your headcanon.
All right.
I'm just glad you're listening to these and liking them okay.
Yes. I love things. I love projects that I like, so... we're gonna skip all of Merrick's torture porn, and go to...
Brothers, priests, chosen ones, Sangtafi, tonight we commune with the Lorga. His greatest gift he has given to us, the rite of unity, the ritual of death.
Vincent! He's up there next to her. Has he undergone the training as well?
Hold your questions, brother. Now is the time for reverence.
Hear now the words of the sevenfold purified text, as spoken by Krishaya himself. Those who eat flesh and drink blood have immortality. All who eat flesh and drink blood Remain in me, and I in them. We know that it is not the will of the Lord God that we harm each other, and so we offer ourselves. Brothers, display your allegiance.
Oh, brothers, your arms. How did you get such horrible scars on them?
Unveil the blade of sanctification.
What's going on?
Take out your dagger, brother! The communing approaches!
Take strength from the Lord God, and sustenance from your flesh. Eat, brothers. Eat of your flesh and live forever.
All right, so yeah, as I said, we're gonna skip all of Merrick's torture porn and go directly to the torturing of the crowd. In the
Oh, jeez, yeah.
yeah,
When they're eating their own flesh.
yeah. Surprisingly, that is not as disturbing as what happens in the middle of this. Anyways, did you know that Merrick became a mouse at one point? Yeah, it's kind of disturbing. Anyways,
What was that like listening to basically your dad play that scene? Was that weird?
we're gonna skip this.
Okay, we'll come back to that. Maybe when we're done.
Actually,
not
we're
recording.
not. We're not gonna come back to that.
Oh, okay.
Actually,
Okay. We'll talk about that over dinner sometime.
no, I refuse
Okay.
to talk about it. So this is the scene where we learn about not the communion, but instead is the communing. There's a little bit of a spelling error, whoever designed that. Come on, you guys. Oh, that's right. My dad wrote the script. Shame on you. It's the communion.
The great communing.
Yeah. Anyways, so that is obviously there's obviously a twist on communion. This once a month thing. So now I realize saying this sentence that this happens once a month. So that is great.
Yeah, well, I guess for our church, we do it once a month. Some churches, many churches, do it every week, and some once a month, and some maybe even less than that. I don't know.
Great.
Yeah, but not this, thankfully. They do. They usually have little bits of bread and juice.
Yeah. So the first question that I have is how your twisted mind came up with this.
Well, I mean, it starts with what happened when Jesus told his disciples that they would need to eat of his flesh and drink of his blood. And the disciples, there was a bunch that left after that. I don't remember the book, chapter, and verse reference, but basically a bunch left, and then Jesus turned to the ones that remained and said, what about you? Are you going to leave too? And they said, where could we go? You alone have the words of life. But what Jesus was teaching there was easily misunderstood, very controversial. It was intense and weird and hard to hear. And I think in part because, people just were ready to write it off as this guy's crazy. He's talking about eating flesh and drinking blood. And he wasn't literally talking about, eating his physical flesh and drinking his physical blood, But for those that are not seeking truth and are interested in asking questions, they just scoff and walk away, and Jesus taught in a way that was for those who would actually want to seek truth and ask questions and try to understand instead of just making up their minds and walking away. And so this is basically based on that principle that some people are just going to assume what they're going to assume, and they're going to run with it, and they're not going to really think or investigate the truth. And so it's just that through line of the Sanctafi being caught up in traditions and man-made ideas, or in some cases demon-made ideas, with the high priestess being who she actually is, and then just kind of running with those ideas. So that's kind of like how I think part of it is probably because, well, it could be because they have an incomplete text. Remember, believers in this scenario are dealing with fragments, and so there's words missing here and there. Who knows what they're working with? But then also, the text was like, you don't touch it, you don't read it, we just listen to the high priestess. And so there might have been stuff. In fact, I'm trying to remember with Salos' scene, when he actually opens up the Bible and looks at what they have of it, if there was actually confirmation that, oh, we're not supposed to be eating our own flesh and drinking. I can't remember if he gets to that passage or not. There's several passages. Okay. So it may be that they actually had that passage in their text, but the high priestess was keeping them from it. That's not really specified. But the point is, they fall into this twisted version of it because they're not pursuing truth.
Okay. Or, hear me out. The Dark One looked at that and thought, let's make that literal.
Yeah, well, I think that's all part of it.
Yeah.
I think Satan and his allies want to create situations, opportunities for us to go down a path away from truth and make that appealing to us in some way. And so, yeah, I think that's could very well be what the Dark One did in this case.
Or it's all just comedy.
Well, I don't think it's not that funny.
Maybe it is too.
But I did make it up.
Yeah, okay. Anyways, so then another question. What does this room look like? I'm very interested on what this room looked like. I always imagined it to be some sort of like satanic looking thing.
Yeah.
Because especially with this thing here, you guys can't see it, but
the cover image.
The cover image of Spirit Blade Dark Ritual is this circle with runes in it.
Yes,
so.
And that was taken directly from a Dungeons and Dragons video game called Neverwinter Nights. And there was certain spells that like would create these circles with runes in them made of light in the ground, and then like the spell effects would come out of that. And I gave that as a reference to the guy who designed the cover. And I said, I want something that looks like this. And he actually just lifted those runes and stuff. He didn't like copy the image. He made his own version of this. He made his own version of the same thing. But I mean, like he basically just took the same runes, made his own version of those runes. So that's where that comes from.
Okay.
And you can actually see in the cover image how the predominant image, it's really like clever and meaningful on his part. The dominating image is these runes and this circle and stuff. And very faded in the background is the sword that represents the Spirit Blade. And so that symbolically really represents how these other things had overtaken the Word of God. And the Word of God had taken a back seat and just faded into the background. So it's a really, really cool design on his part.
Okay. That doesn't answer my question.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
That is a very interesting topic. My question was, like, what does this room look like? Does it have, like, this?
Yeah, I just imagined it as, like, a large underground cavern.
Everything's kind of underground.
Yeah. Just big cavernous kind of thing. In some ways, a little bit like if you've seen The Matrix Reloaded, and you see like the big area that they meet in, and Morpheus gives the big inspirational speech up on the kind of like the rock edge, and then they all start their dance party and stuff like that after that.
It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while. But something like that, I imagine it this very kind of like just pretty natural cave-like place with a few things with practical purposes, ritual things in there, but mostly, just a big classic D&D cavern.
I wanted it to look more ritualistic.
It does. Then that's fine. It totally does.
I know.
I mean, that's the beauty of audio drama.
Okay. So that's the last of the questions that have to do with, like, the lore of this place, I think.
Okay.
Now we're going to get into the final two vague questions, which is, what did you have in mind for Dark Ritual that didn't make the cut, first of all?
Oh, man. Well, I don't know that there's really an answer to that, because with the script for Spirit Blade, I wrote, in fact, I probably still have somewhere, in fact, I know I do, a longer version of that script that had more stuff from the novella in it. And then I did a read-through with Mickey Bryce and Brian, I can't remember his last name, but he was a sound guy, a lighting guy at the time at the church, and Mike Tully. And they gave me feedback and stuff like that. And based on that, I trimmed down a bunch of stuff. Okay. So there was, in the case of the first one, a longer script that was trimmed down. If you want to remind me, I can dig through my archives and see if I have an earlier version of the Dark Ritual script that would be really easy to find stuff that had been cut out. But I just don't know that... starting with Dark Ritual, it didn't have to be a live show. The first one, being a live show, meant that we had to consider how long people would be willing to sit down for a live performance. We had the performance, we had an intermission, but similar to what we're seeing with like streaming services and movies that are being released on streaming services, you look at Zack Snyder's Justice League as a great example of this. It's
divided into 6 parts, but it's a full 4.5-hour movie.
Yeah, that would be bonkers for most people to put in theaters. That's asking way too much of the vast majority of people.
Yeah.
But if you can watch it at home, watch it at your own pace, then it becomes a different animal. And so, I can't remember what the runtime is for Spirit Blade, but it's definitely longer than...
This one is, with the songs, is about 3 hours.
Okay. Which is acceptable for a movie, but it's still pretty beefy, you know. And A World of Shadows was even longer, I think. So I didn't have to cut stuff unless I wanted to cut stuff, and so there wasn't anything that was cut that like, oh, I wish that could have been in, because anything I really wanted to have in there, I kept in, and anything that I cut out, it would have been because I felt like it was not good. It wasn't anything that was needed. So. I don't think there's any like little gems that didn't make it into Dark Ritual.
Okay. And then my last question for you is, what would you change now?
I think I would be more likely to find a lot of little changes that I would make. Just from... I couldn't give you specifics, but I think that there would just be little changes that I would make related to maybe character development. Maybe I would lean into character development a little bit more, even though this definitely was more character-oriented than the first one. There was a joke that I didn't remove, but I very much de-emphasized in the special edition version. Where like when Salos is getting ready to go into the to investigate to get to the book, to the text, and those two guys are standing guard, and he tells them that no, you can go on ahead, you know, you can go on to the communing, you know, and then they walk off and they're kind of talking to each other, you know, and one of them says, you know, something about like, oh yeah, I need to. I don't know if he said I need a bath or something, but there's a stench under these robes, you know, and that's I've been hiding a stench under these robes, and his brother says his brother Sanctafi says, no, you haven't, brother, meaning like he can smell it, you know. Well, the idea there was that he hadn't bathed in a while, but as a joke, as an improvised joke, Preston said something about.
That was Preston.
Yeah, that was Preston. This is the Scottish Sanctafi. He, as an improvised joke, he said something about like, well, it's all this cabbage they keep giving us, which that would speak to the stench being related to gas, that he was having, not a stench from not bathing. But I mean, like, I cracked up. We both cracked up so much during the recording. I just said, okay, let's go with that, and I think that wasn't my best judgment, to put a fart joke in there.
Definitely not. This is a thing about people getting tortured and turned into mice. So
well, but see, that's part of it that I think there is a flavor of humor, and it's a type that I enjoy, that very briefly and suddenly and unexpectedly plays against the established tone.
But we all know that you have very different opinions compared to the...
Sure, yeah, but when you're creating stuff, I mean, like, that's the danger of of the more independent your work as a creator gets, the more likely you are to go off on paths that are not going to connect with people, and certainly I've done that. At the same time, the more independent you are, the more you're going to be able to explore ideas that are creative and interesting and different from what is already being done out there. And so there's a whole spectrum between weird and off the beaten path and kind of a mess and doesn't work because it's so independent, and doesn't work and is so boring because it's made by committee, aka Disney these days, and what they've been doing. So, and like, as we record this, Dune 2 just came out, and that wasn't like this awesome experience for me, but I totally get why people are digging it, because it's, IGN wrote a review saying basically this, and I think they're probably onto something, saying that, like, hey, just a movie with a clear directorial vision is unfortunately getting more rare these days, and so that's why they speculate people are responding as well as they are in part, to Dune 2. And so all that rabbit trail to say, yeah, I think I would fix that, and I would probably discover listening to these again, which I haven't done in like 5 years or more. I'm sure and part of the reason is because the last time I listened to them was like, yeah, I don't know if I can listen to this, There's just things about it I don't like. I think every time I go back and listen to it, I'm like, don't like this, don't like this. Okay, that's okay. Okay, that still works. Yeah, don't like this, don't like that, So, and those are just the hazards of doing something on your own with no checks and balances, no one telling you, you can't do that. I mean, that's how David gets killed. That's how you have this really dark torture scene for Merrick. That's how you have this almost kind of hinted pseudo-sexual thing that went on between Vincent and the High Priestess, who turns out to be the dark one. This is an audio drama being made by a Christian, and it's exploring some freaking dark things that, especially at the time that this came out in 2008, keep in mind, we just weren't seeing this happen in Christian creative circles, and I wanted the freedom to really explore these kinds of things. I think we're inching more into that territory now, certainly in the realm of published novels, self-published, small print published sci-fi, fantasy, horror being written by Christians. But in 2008, there was almost nothing. I mean, nothing I could find that was going to the really intense places that I was going to. So that's part of the price you pay to really have that freedom. So to answer your question, I ditched the fart joke. I would take it out completely. Now, in the special edition,
you did kind of take it out.
It's you have to be listening, so you have to turn it up and listen so carefully to find it. But I mean, I would take that out completely, and there'd probably be a bunch of other things that I would change.
Okay. What specific character things? Like, just give me one specific character thing. That you would change.
I wonder, Brittany Davis did such a great job with the U.2 version of Ebony.
Okay.
She did such a great job, and I'm so grateful for that. And so I would hate to remove her from the story. However, when I see what Holly, my wife, your mom, was able to bring to A World of Shadows, just from me spending time with her and really trying to get her to the performance places that I needed her to be, I might have underestimated Holly and what she was capable of, and so, but I think also the stage of life, it made sense to replace her in some ways, and what I would want. I just wasn't sure at that time. As much as she brought to the first one that I really appreciated, I knew I wanted to take Ebony to some really emotionally intense places, like the exchange between her and Ran. She is like grunting and crying and all kinds of things that she's feeling, and I just wasn't sure that I, as a director, combined with Holly as not really an actor, was really going to be up for going to those really intense places. And so I felt like the U.2 plot point, even though it wasn't designed to do this, I realized that we could use that to get a different actor in there that could more comfortably handle those kinds of things, which of course Brittany did wonderfully.
Was she one of the online actors?
No, she went to Red Mountain.
Okay.
And then she was here. She was going to our church for Dark Ritual. But when I had her record just a little bit for the beginning of A World of Shadows, she had moved away by that point. And that's why, and we can talk about this, I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, but that's why in A World of Shadows, because of the quality of her microphone, that I couldn't convincingly put her in the same room with you would just notice that the quality of her recording was not as good. I had all of her lines in A World of Shadows happen while she was in the tank.
Okay.
So there was like a speaker that she was supposedly talking through, and I even added a little bit of a filter to even more lean into the bad quality.
Okay.
But that's why you never hear Brittany Davis talk outside of the tank in A World of Shadows. Because she was far away, and she sent me a recording on her just using her laptop, So anyway, but yeah, I do wonder, it's like, could Holly have done that? Would she have been up to that? But I mean, like, we were going through some major life changes at the time. I quit my job to start Spirit Blade Productions, and she was pregnant soon after that with you. And so it wasn't a time where I was wanting to ask, that I would have been wanting to ask a lot of her anyway. But I guess that's something maybe I wonder about, is like if I really needed to recast that role, but that would be the only thing maybe.
All right. Yeah, I think that'll about do it. Anything else?
No, I'm just so glad that you're interested enough to want to ask these questions. So thank you.
All right, we're halfway done with this series.
Yeah, the timing of these, as far as when they go up, what podcast episodes they're in, I don't know if they're going to be weekly or not, because I'll need to consider like what other content is going up those weeks, But I'll try to get them up as soon as I can. So, thank you for your patience. If there's been a gap between this one and the last one, or if there's another gap between this one and the next one. For more chat about geek entertainment, answers to your questions, and news from the wider world of Christian geekery, get the Christian Geek Central podcast today on iTunes and other podcast services.